Just like it's been for the last 4 years, currently the Ohio Club is split. What's up? My name is Jeff Carr. They are Locked On Guardians, Justin Latta, and Jeff Ellis. We are crossing over to break down the first half of the Ohio Cup that happened at Great American Ballpark. Thanks for joining us here on Locked On Reds or Locked On Guardians. We are both part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. We appreciate you for hanging on with us every single day as we break down the goings-on of the two best professional teams playing baseball in Ohio. Okay, I get it. There's only two professional teams in Ohio, but that's what we are. And we are 1-2 in the MLB Draft this year. We are going to break that down a little bit later on in today's podcast as Jeff and Justin know all things draft, and I at least know a few prospects that the Reds are looking at here at number 2, partially just who the Guardians don't pick at number 1. We're also going to talk about some fun facts about the Ohio Cup in just a few minutes, but our overall feelings about this series. Jeff, Justin, I know that after game 1, it was looking like, ooh, this might be a pretty opportunistic series for the Guardians. But then Nick Lodolo came in and was able to limit the damage. And Jeimer Candelario decided to hit all of the home runs in game 2. And that's where we set it 1 game apiece.
Yeah, I thought after game 1, it was a good pitching performance from Tristan McKenzie for the Guardians. Although,
yes, it was.
Tyler Freeman did save the day a little bit, made the ballpark a little bit bigger.
Can you win a Gold Glove in one day? Because I think he did.
We were joking the other day. We were saying, I don't know how the formula works for defensive runs saved, but that was 3 runs right there. He saved by himself.
Not bad for a guy who hadn't played center field until March of this year.
Right.
Go figure. Of course, that's how it rolls.
I know. Before we get any deeper, though, I do quickly want to say that today's episode of Locked On Guardians and Reds is brought to you by Tax Network USA. Did you know it's never too late to resolve your tax issues with the IRS? Don't wait. Reduce your tax debt and get help from a team of licensed tax professionals. Call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/locked-on. Thank you to Tax Act for sponsoring this crossover today. But yeah, I think Justin and I are always texting happily and angrily throughout these games. And Cleveland had multiple chances in this one. But today was the Reds with defensive plays taking care of business. Like it was the Guardians yesterday. It was kind of a interesting mirror. Like it was the other way around with the big plays coming defensively for the Reds and Cleveland not being. I mean, they gave up one. Bibee had given up 1 hit until that inning.
Yeah,
the Reds were 1 hit until the explosion. But it's 2 teams that are playing very well, and it's kind of what you expect. Now, honestly, with you guys throwing the bullpen game, I don't want to get into a sore subject. I felt like we had an advantage going into yesterday, even with McKenzie being a little up and down. Today's game was the fun one because it's 2 young guys that are trying to kind of ascend to that mantle of ace. And we were hoping it'd be our guy. It wasn't today, even though he looked fantastic. Yeah. But that's why it's fun. The question is, can we not have another tie in the Ohio Cup? Can we somehow figure out a way to not have another tie?
Tie keeps the trophy in Cleveland. Hey, okay, the trophy still exists in Cleveland.
That's true.
Every time they tie.
Tie does keep it there. And the funny thing for me is there's such a huge gap now between the next 2 games. Next 2 games don't happen until September. So we're going to table this. We're going to table this for, another 3 months. It's kind of crazy to think these 2 teams could be in completely different positions by then. Most likely will be at some point. But yeah, the bullpen game for me is interesting because so far this year, it's actually kind of worked out for them. And the biggest reason why has been Nick Martinez has been able to go deep into the ballgame. He pitched 4 or 5 innings in each of the bullpen games for the Reds. And that's really what's made it feel a lot better. This bullpen game that the Reds had on Tuesday felt a lot like the bullpen games, quote unquote, that they had in 2023. And I say it quote unquote because they didn't have a 5th pitcher. And so they're just like, all right, we got to throw the rest of our pitchers at this game because we don't have a 5th starting pitcher that's healthy and ready to go. So there was a lot of just really rough bullpen games in 2023. So I had dubbed that like a 4-letter word coming into this season. And up until Tuesday, it had kind of worked. And Nick Lodolo didn't have his best stuff, but I was happy to see that he limited the damage where the Guardians, like you guys said, were super opportunistic in game one. The thing for me, and they talked about this a lot on the Reds broadcast, is that this was a 2-game set between the number 1 and number 2 bullpens in Major League Baseball coming to this point, if only you just look at the records after the 7th inning. The Guardians have the best record when leading after the 7th inning, and the Reds have the second best record when leading after the 7th inning. So the game plan for both teams in this series was get up early, because if you don't, it's going to be tough to come back. And Emmanuel Clase is a much different class of closer than Alexis Diaz, but Diaz was able to keep the scoreboard clean and really keep the base paths clean for the first time in what felt like 84 years on Wednesday evening. Like, that was nice to see.
I kind of felt like if Cleveland got down in this game that it was not going to be good for them with the bullpen. Like, Sims was really good the other night, and I know he was good again tonight, and Sam Moll's been tough, even though Cleveland does hit lefties pretty well. I had a feeling that if the bullpen came in, it was going to be kind of tough, but anytime Cleveland is given a lead, they definitely are able to shut the other offense down. I can't get over the fact that it was just 2 swings that really cursed this game for Cleveland. Yeah. Well, more than 2 swings. I mean, it was a couple swings, because I mean, Candelario hit those 2 home runs, but David Fry hits that line drive to third base that gets caught, would have had a chance, and then Jeff and I were texting back during the game. Yeah, we were texting about Brian Rocchio being thrown at home really hurt them. What seemed like a pretty rough call from the third base coach, because that was a leadoff double and then a hit by pitch. And the offense did a good job, like off of Lodolo, who I know sometimes can struggle with command. They worked 3 walks off him. They were super patient. They got into position to work walks, and they had a 4th one off of Sims. They just could not cash in. And that's anybody's biggest issue, is not hitting with runners in scoring position. But when they don't hit enough home runs to have power like that, where like they don't have Jeimer Candelario games really, unless Jose Ramirez does it or David Fry comes through. But like, yeah, that's what last week we've seen. Like the Royals, they struggled with runners in scoring position. They had a game against the Marlins where they didn't hit with runners in scoring position, and then tonight they were 1 for 7. So, when they do that, it's awfully hard. And 2 runs, I'm sure, Jeff, as you know, doesn't win a whole lot of ball games at Great American Ballpark.
And that's the thing. Part of me did wonder if the third base coach didn't know. Listen, I'm bad with names. If he didn't know Jacob H. and that like his arm score is actually quite good on here. And we talked about Rocchio might be a middle infielder, but he has not run well. So it seemed, and again, that's only 1 more run. But it's the little things like that where it's like, hey, maybe Freeman hits into a double play, so it doesn't matter. But it was the little things that could have allowed them to have more of a cushion, which, it just gives you that. And like I said, it was to the defense. It was the carbon copy of the game before. It shows why both these teams are good, right? Like stellar defensive plays, tight situations, good bullpens, timely hitting. This shows 2 teams that, are trying to be postseason contenders. And I think it very well showed why they are, why these aren't, as Cleveland Guardians coverage, everyone's waiting for this team to fall apart. And I think they kind of help show to maybe a questionable Reds fan why they're for real. And if there's a Cleveland fan who wasn't paying attention, just sees the Reds near the bottom of their division and doesn't know they'd won 12 of 16, I think coming in, could be wrong in that. That's like that. Then you wouldn't know, like, no, this Reds team is turning around. That, if all of you're really paying attention, is like Will Benson, it's like, oh, it's like even he is like all of the team in general. It's like turning around, making the right moves, and why these are 2 teams that like everyone should be aware of and watching out for as we are, getting closer and closer to that midpoint.
Could be I think it's going to be a really fun summer, all summer long, and even going into playoff contention season for baseball in Ohio. It's going to be a lot of fun. And we're going to look a little bit ahead at a couple of things that we can expect from both of our teams, and a couple of fun facts about the Ohio Cup. That is coming up next.
I want to take a second here, as anyone who listens to our show knows, Prize Picks, I have a lot of fun going there. And I was looking at today's stats, and I want to give an idea for tomorrow. Lance Lynn is not the best strikeout pitcher, but Lance Lynn only needs 5 strikeouts tomorrow against the Pirates. The Pirates currently I lost my tab here, have the 4th most strikeouts in baseball. So you're looking at a situation that is ideal to pick more over 5 because Lance Lynn is facing a team that has a lot of strikeouts. The other side of it is I like to look at batter scores with extreme values. Aaron Judge has an 11 tomorrow against Kansas City. Alec Marsh, he's not a big name, but he actually has a FIP of about 4.02. So I would recommend taking the under on that score of 11 for Aaron Judge. So that's 2. Remember, with Prize Picks, you just want to go to the app or go to the website or the app, should say, use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, all one word, for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match, all lowercase, one word, up to $100. Prize Picks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Let's talk about Policygenius. I know insurance is one of those things that not everyone loves to talk about, not everyone really wants to get into, but it's one of those things we have to do in life. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. I've talked before about how when my company got bought out, we had life insurance through another third-party company. It didn't come with us when the company got bought out, so I've had to go out and seek out different things. And if you are in a high-risk job, it's going to be a lot harder for that and get the insurance protection your family needs. It may not always cover everything, and it may be hard to get through your company. Policygenius helps you compare all those options with a team of licensed experts, and they're on hand to help you talk through it. And they're not biased to pick one insurance agent over another. They're going to help you with their team to pick out the best policy for you as well. They have no incentive to recommend one insurance or another. And if you don't trust that, you can trust thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best fit for their needs. So check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/LockedOnMLB or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes. See how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/LockedOnMLB.
You have got to check out Locked On Sports Today 24/7. It is a 24/7 streaming feed that is free on YouTube or the Amazon Fire TV channel's app. It brings you the biggest stories in all of sports. We got opinions, we got analysis, and it's all from the local hosts of Locked On, like Jeff, Justin, and myself, and our national shows that cover every league. So check out Locked On Sports Today 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon channel, Fire TV channel's app. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. And thanks for checking out today's Locked On Reds, Locked On Guardians crossover as we recap a 1-1 2-game series. 2-game set, 2-game series. I don't know what you call a 2-game series. I don't like 2-game series, but that's what the Reds and Guardians just played. And it was 1 apiece. And looking ahead for both of our teams, I mean, the Guardians came into this series just absolutely playing amazing baseball. Is this something that will continue? Because it really seems like they have the kind of team to just take advantage of good opportunities that they put in front of them. And oh, by the way, they got Stephen Kwan leading off, who just doesn't make outs.
The bullpen should help them throughout the year. I mean, obviously the bullpen has been their biggest strength, obviously. I mean, when you have a back end like that who doesn't give up runs, I mean, even in this game, the bullpen came in and shut the door after Bibee gave up 3-4 runs and 2 of them on 2 different swings, but that's going to help them carry them through the year as well. And they haven't gotten the best starting pitching. When Tanner Bibee has been fantastic, and I think it's just a few steps away from being an ace, maybe just 2 pitches a game. Apparently, it seems like sometimes. And offensively, they lost Stephen Kwan for a month, and he's back, and like you said, doesn't make any outs. So sometimes I feel like this team still hasn't even been the best version of themselves that they could be, and maybe that they get there through adding a starting pitcher, adding an extra bat. But I don't know. They've just been, my only concern is like it's hitting with runners in scoring position. Like when they don't, like I said before, if you don't hit with runners in scoring position, you don't score. And then I know the playoffs are like so bent on home runs. This is not a team that can win by just hitting solo home runs. Not many teams can. But if you just run into one of those weeks where you don't hit with runners in scoring position, it can be really tough. But they've got enough guys who do good things. It's all about just catching teams at the right cycle. Even better, the series was 7-7 after 2 games. Both teams have scored 7 runs.
It's just funny to see the way these two teams are playing. I mean, the Guardians have started off the season so well. The Reds have been a roller coaster. And really, their greatest strength is also their greatest weakness, and that is their youth. I mean, they're going to be inconsistent. This is going to be a team that is up and down, but they're going to be in this National League playoff race all season long. And quite frankly, I mean, this weekend the Reds have the Brewers, and they have a very good shot to cut the lead that they've got down. I do feel like a little bit of what the Brewers has done is with smoke and mirrors. 28 pitchers I think they've used so far this season, and I think that is going to come back to bite them at some point. No Corbin Burns after trading him. If they get a good offer for Willy Adames, how can they say no? If they get a good offer, once Devin Williams comes back, like, this is a team not necessarily going to blow it up, but if they get some good offers, they could definitely reset for like a year or two, because they've got guys that are ready to go right now. I mean, Jackson Churio, and they got Sal Frelick up there. So I think that the Reds have an opportunity, should they play well in the very near future, that they could get back in the division race, let alone just this wild card race. It's going to be such a fun summer to see. And kind of like you said, I mean, the pitching has been a strength for the Reds. It's all about the lineup. Is it going to be healthy? There's been weird updates on Christian Encarnacion Strand. He could have surgery and be out for the rest of the year. He could be playing through a ligament injury, that he has ligament damage in his right wrist. I don't necessarily know that is something I want him playing through, but we'll see if they try that. And then Matt McLain, we keep hearing positive reports that he could be back by August, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I don't necessarily know that I'm counting on him to return at any point in the season after labrum surgery. So we'll see. That could be a big update for the Reds, and that's not counting on any trades that they could make at the deadline, because Nick Krall has said that he expects to be a buyer. So I don't know necessarily to what degree he could do that. He was a buyer last year and got one player, so who knows what that means for this season. But how the Reds move forward with that is going to determine quite a bit, because this roster has been in flux with random injuries all year, and just getting TJ Friedl back has been the catalyst for this most recent run.
Must be nice to have, not that we're complaining about our GM at all or how this team runs, but it's interesting to hear that another team has a GM that says expect to be buyers, because if you were to ask Chris Antonetti or Mike Chernoff that straight up, they would say, well, we always evaluate where we're at in the standings, and we're always looking to be opportunistic with adding players to our roster, no matter what position we're in. We're always looking to add good players to our roster. So there's never like any straight up answer direction, like, we expect to be buyers. I know this year, like, most GMs aren't going to say that, but that's very interesting to hear that there is a president of baseball operations or GM that actually comes out and says, like, yeah, we're going to acquire players, because we don't hear that in Cleveland, honestly.
Yeah. Cleveland's much more tempered in their tone of anything. It's like they treat all information like they're guarding Fort Knox. I do wish the Reds well and all of it. I will say, like, as Guardians fans, we have seen that labrums are a finicky beast at best, and that is one of those situations that is like, I really like Matt McLain. Like, I followed him back to his high school days, and he was a lot of fun to watch. But he is, Cleveland has a few guys who have kind of that injury bug, and that feels like one of those things that's always fallen upon McLain. But I hope I'm wrong in that assessment, because I always want baseball to be better and more fun and have the best players out there and playing. But it's also the interesting thing where, like, I like listening to the opposing fans broadcast. I do that for every game, and listening to how you guys can withstand still losing a CES, losing McLain, and the depth of hitters that have come up. And I know, it's not perfect that you're starting to run out of that depth to a degree, but that's the other thing that separates these teams is, for a long time there, it felt like Cleveland had the never-ending pitching, and it felt like the Reds had never-ending hitting. And for both teams, that when you're trying to contend, it starts to end because you've graduated everyone. So both these teams are kind of to the point where they've built themselves the way they're going to be built. And I think we can see why both these teams should be buyers at the deadline, that they don't have necessarily huge needs, but they have needs that can be fixed and filled. So maybe we could finally have the dream I had in the late 90s when the Reds were good and Cleveland was good, that we'd have the Ohio World Series, and Major League Baseball weeps about their ratings.
I was going to say,
Rob Manfred, You'd have to do the crying Jordan meme on Manfred. That would just be him holding that World Series trophy if we had an Ohio World Series.
That would be so much fun because yes, it would be stressful as heck watching those games between these two teams because they're so evenly matched, but also just the joy of East Coasters and West Coasters being like, really? This is oh boy. Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun to watch. Hopefully one day we get to that. I know this though, coming up here in just a smidge over a month is the MLB Draft, and Guardians are 1, Reds are number 2. Something about Ohio. Maybe that is a World Series preview. Who knows? That would be, gosh, that'd be a lot of fun. We're going to talk about what 1 and 2 look like coming up next, and just a few facts, a few fun Ohio Cup facts. Sorry, the Ohio Cup. Didn't say it right. That is coming up in just a moment. Here on Locked On Reds and Locked On Guardians, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news about the Reds and the Guardians, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or even the playoffs. It's year-round. We're here year-round. You know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean that IRS will stop coming after unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. You need somebody on your side. You need Tax Network USA because they help you with all of the differing situations that can come up with taxes. As an independent contractor, I know this. You don't just file taxes whenever you're an independent contractor. You got to have somebody help you out. I found this out the hard way a couple of years ago, and Tax Network USA just makes it so much easier. They've got over 14 years of experience, and they've got an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Tax Network USA has really helped me out, and it's helped out over $1 billion in tax debt for so many different people. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/locked on. For more information, see the link in this episode description below. And, by the way, you can catch every pitch of the Guardians and the Reds hometown broadcasts with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Guardians or Reds. And as we kind of close out this crossover here, recapping the series, 1-1 apiece, the Ohio Cup will not finish until September. But before we get to that point, we have the draft. And I know how much, Jeff, you love the draft. And I know how much you have covered the draft over the years. So you were given this amazing gift of the Guardians going number 1 overall. And I know that you guys have really broached this, but I'm going to ask it to you. And Reds fans are curious because it's like, all right, whoever the Guardians go get, that's the only guy that's off the board for the Reds. If you're making the pick, who are you picking?
Any of our listeners know by now that it's Travis Bazzana for me. I just think he is above average across the board to plus in every single way. We recently got some advanced data our hands on, and I was going through it. And the player who had the biggest increase, now it was not all players, in 90th percentile exit velocity, which is often a great way to measure power, was Travis Bazzana. Like, he not only was he already the guy with the hit tool, he had the biggest increase in power of any player a year ago in terms of that measurement. So I just don't see a lot of knocks on him. If you want to get really finicky, the Pac-12 wasn't good this year, but he was awesome in the Cape, which is the best of the best. Or the fact that, he's a little bit older, like he'll turn 22 not long after the draft, but it's not, you're really picking nits in those situations. So he's just a complete prospect, and he's got, by all accounts, just killer work ethic. We had one of our guests call him Kobe Bryant in terms of the work ethic and the time he puts in. Before I hand it over to Justin, I got to throw this out to you guys. I was quickly in between segments pulling up. Do you know when the last time was that the Guardians and the Reds both had top 5 selections?
19 80 something.
It was in the 90s. It was
Early
in the
90?
90s. It was 1992,
Mm.
where Cleveland took Paul Shuey second, and at 5 the Reds took Chad Mottola. So hopefully this works out better for both teams. If you're curious, the best player that year was a guy named Derek Jeter by WAR. I don't think I've heard of him. Followed by Johnny Damon, Jason Kendall, Shannon Stewart, and Charles Johnson. But Chad Mottola and
Boy, that
Paul
had
Shuey.
a steep fall off there.
Yeah, it was
Charles
well.
Johnson in there.
Well, foreshadowing this year, right, Jeff?
Charles Johnson had a WAR of 22.6 for his career. Like, as much as I was like, oh, I didn't think he was that good. It's like it's a lot. But yeah, it's that class. You know, it's weird when Cleveland has the second overall pick and takes a reliever. So that's how weird that weird was.
Shuey was a reliever. Shuey had some good years.
But a reliever
between
second
and
overall.
Yeah.
No, it's
and there's your argument against taking a pitcher that high, especially this year in this class of pitching.
We do have to comment though. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we did see. I did see on Instagram the other day that Chase Burns was actually at the game on Tuesday night in Great American Ballpark. He was sitting on the first base side, so I don't know if that's where the Reds are at, right? That's the home side first base. So I don't know if the Reds are hosting him for a visit or whatnot. But I mean, we've debated
top
on
5 talent. So we want to talk to all of them. So hosting him shouldn't be anything.
Yeah, I mean you're gonna do due diligence on everybody in that top group right there. But I don't know. We've debated whether or not maybe Chase Burns is 2. He's probably 3 for both of us. I don't want to put words in Jeff's mouth, but I think he's number 3 for both of us. But
yeah,
if it's not Bazzana, then it's definitely Condon. And I mean Burns is a way to maybe cut some money because I don't know who's gonna want to spend them or who's gonna want the highest bonus, right? Because that's what's gonna come down to. The Reds have an interesting approach in the draft. Like they a couple of years ago bought Cam Collier all the way down to their pick, which was really wild. So they're not afraid to spend that money, and whereas Cleveland is looking to spread the money around the entire draft versus one pick, which is why I mean we have no idea what these guys are demanding. But Burns feels like one of those guys that you would be cutting money with, and if Condon is still like there at number 2,
expensive. So like, how much do you save? Like, I always think whoever
goes
go
in for number 1, right? You got to.
And whoever if you're going 1. Unless you're a guy who's like going way down the board, like I like James Tibbs. Not everyone is as crazy about him. Like I understand if a team were to grab him and he signs for like 6.6 was one of the rumors I saw at one point. But it's like even if you're taking Burns or something like that, they're going to get 9.3. They're going to get more in Skeens. Like whoever you get who's in that top tier is going to want to be the highest paid guy. So you're still take your best guy and move on.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Like, if it's not Bazzana, like, if for some reason Bazzana falls, I'll be happy about that. But it's got to be Charlie Condon for the Reds. As much as I read about it and as much as I worry about how much the Reds love a college pitcher, I think that they got to go with Condon here because he looks like a guy that could move through the system pretty quickly. And then you're talking about a possible corner outfielder where, don't get me wrong, I love Jake Fraley and I love Will Benson, but it kind of feels like they are getting pigeonholed and kind of getting stuck as platoon guys. They just don't hit left-handed pitching. And as much as they have been given opportunities to do so, they just really haven't come up big for that. So I think that you got to look at that right-handed college outfield bat. So I'd be interested to see if the Reds do go with Chase Burns, or the outlier of Hagen Smith, but I really hope it's Charlie Condon with number 2. And quickly, before we jump out of today's episode, wanted to ask you guys a few things and see, because I got the chance the other day to host a radio show on ESPN 1530 here in Cincinnati, and so I did a little bit of research on the Ohio Cup, and I didn't know a few of these things, and they've happened within all of our lifetimes. So other than I told you guys off air about the Cincinnati Red Stockings in Forest City in 1869, Cincinnati versus Cleveland. Cleveland was called Forest City back then. But did you know that the first 7 games of the Ohio Cup were not actually counted because they were scrimmages before the season started? From 1989 through 1996. In fact, it was even played with replacement players in 1995. And none of the names I'd ever heard of.
I
like
can think of one name.
Vague recollections of like this occurring.
Mm.
Do you have the names in front of you, Jeff? Because I'd be curious if one of them is actually a current Guardians coach. I think it might be. Rugi Odor, the third base coach. I think Rugi Odor was a replacement player that year, and I think that might be one of the guys who would have played in the Ohio Cup, or would have been the replacement player that year. Because I remember reading his bio saying that he was a replacement player for a little bit.
So the only names that it puts up is Tim Delgado and Rich Savor. Rich Salver. Yeah, that's no Rugi Odor there, but yeah, it's
Rugless, yeah.
Rugless. It's funny to see that was the case. It was a scrimmage back then, and I'll ask you this as a trivia question. We'll get out of here, and I'll be interested to see if there's comments or something like this. But I'll see if you guys know the answer to this because it's not as hard as you think. But who was the first player when the games counted to hit a home run in the Ohio Cup? 1997. I'll give you that hint.
Well, it wasn't Kenny Lofton because he was not on the team that year. I was going to guess Lofton because he was.
So Marquise Grissom.
Oh, geez. God, I can't do Marquise Grissom. I'm going to go off the board and say Omar Vizquel just because he seems like the unlikely one.
Maybe it's a Red.
Too hard. You're thinking too hard. No, it is a Guardian, unfortunately. Although he homered, but the Reds won this game. It was Manny Ramirez. First
I psyched myself out.
No, I have very distinct memories of watching it, and it was the summer of 2000 after I graduated high school. My friend had tickets, and I remember like Pokey Reese being the shortstop and Roberto Alomar on Cleveland, and like I can sit there and picture. Shout out to Steve Lindsay and Molly if any of those people watch this, but I remember going to the game with those three, and it was a fun experience back then. But yeah, no, I would not have guessed Manny Ramirez there either.
I remember Ken Griffey Jr. baseball on Super Nintendo playing against a friend of mine in my neighborhood, and he always played with Cleveland, and I always played with Cincinnati, and I never won.
Good old Frank Liberty, aka Albert Bell. Yep. That's the only game to this day that I played all 162 in was the Ken Griffey Jr. baseball. So this was fun. I want to thank Jeff and Justin for helping get this all together. They definitely took the wheel in terms of scheduling and coordinating. It's a fun competition. Hopefully we can meet up again in September and talk about two first place teams as they get ready to finish off the season. I want to thank everyone joining us from both fan bases. We really appreciated you jumping in and having some fun with us this evening or whenever you're listening to this podcast. Thank you all for joining us. And go ahead.
I was going to say, but you can always trust to come to us every single day for your Guardians content and for your Reds content, because we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your Guardians and your Reds every single day.